quite shocking. It really is.
Well, we don't say it's not, you know,
Photoshop my head in this later. But thank you for all attending. I think one of the neat things about an event like this is not just what we're going to learn, which I expect we're going to learn an awful lot, and I would also expect that we're probably not all going to agree upon what we've learned. But that a couple of ladies, sadly neither one who can be here tonight, but Ann Derwin and Sandy Camp, who kind of got this bug up their bottoms and decided that they were very interested in this issue. And they got together. They had not had any experience before in getting folks rallied in any way, communicating with the media or anything along those lines. And in fact, they alone did all of this. And conveniently, one had fortunately, a death in the family, and another one got the flu, and now you guys got me. So that's the result of the fluid death. So I'm not so sure it's a great outcome for myself. I'm not going to try to make this quickly here. We've got...
Who are you, Jim?
Oh, I'm the guy on my video. But I'm retired. I've been in Muskegon County for about 40 years, and I've been 30-some years in the financial world, and I am now a radio talk show host. Eye on Muskegon every Sunday morning from 8:30 to 10, and we're on the internet at Eye on Muskegon, and we do lots of other radio stuff. But tonight we've got really, actually we had one of our speakers tonight was on my show last weekend, and you can listen to that show afterwards if you're so inclined. If you go to eyeonmuskegon.com. But Dave Sheldon, and I thought that I had a little history here, so I'm just going to introduce him shortly, and I'll let him tell you who he is. But he's a tremendously knowledgeable guy. He's got incredible history when it comes to the science of the smart meter issue. Diana Osterman, also 22-year employee of Lucent Technologies in their wireless division. And hidden back undercover someplace, we've got two gentlemen from Consumers Energy.
Hi, Dennis McKee.
Dennis McKee.
Good evening.
And we're going to have you up here at some point. And thank you so much for attending. We hope that it'll be a horribly hostile crowd. You're making much of Dave Alexander over there. And I would just like to say that we will take a break, and we're going to pass around a box that hopefully will be filled with money, because these two ladies, both retired women, that decided to put this on, had to rent the room, had to pay some other significant costs, and if we could defray those a little bit, that would be nice. And if in fact we are able to fully defray those, we're going to compensate the two speakers here that we have tonight. So if you can, contribute a little bit, and we'll get somebody else to count it. And even though I had 27 years of losing people's money in the financial world. So beyond that, I'm going to introduce Dave Sheldon. And David, take it away.
Jim? Okay. I am the head of Michigan Stop Smart Meters. It's a Detroit-based group. We are the ones that put the program together. Ann Derwin here is the one that made all of the arrangements for the local publicity and everything of that nature. And we certainly thank Ann for that. Now, what we're going to do is kind of the agenda for the evening. I'm going to, yes, sir.
Could you speak up, please?
I'm sorry. I'll get to the microphone.
We are experts on technology here, right?
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for telling me. I will repeat, I represent Michigan Stop Smart Meters. We are a Detroit-based organization. We put together the presentations that you can see tonight. And I will be speaking, and Diana will be speaking. The agenda kind of for the evening is I will give an introductory PowerPoint presentation on what smart meters are all about and why they're controversial. Then Diana will go, and she's going to get much more in depth about the exposure to electromagnetic energy based on her own background with Lucent Technologies and so on. And then we'll have a brief intermission of just about 10 minutes, and then we'll take it up again. And right after the intermission, I'm going to give the talk about privacy. After that, I'll talk about what we're doing to combat all this, politically speaking, and in the courts and before the Public Service Commission. And then we'll have a question and answer. I hope we can save out about the last half hour for questions and answers. Let me just get an idea, a couple of things if I may. How many of you are from the city of Muskegon here? At least half of you. Are some of you from Oceana County? Yeah? Anyone from Ottawa County? I'm covering quite an area here. How many of you already have a smart meter on your house? A lot of you. Okay. How many of you have heard quite a bit about smart meters before and had already decided not to get one? Okay, you guys are informed. How many what?
How many people have been arrested for not letting you put them on?
Okay. Okay, let me get started with the presentation. We'll do the overview. Okay, first of all, so we all have a point of reference. What is an analog meter? The traditional meter looks like this. You can all see it on the screen, right? Has everybody got a reasonable line of sight to the screen, or you're blocked, or? Can everybody see? Okay, anybody got a problem with that? Can you see the screen? Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. This is what a traditional meter looks like for electricity. The analog meter, it's electromechanical in nature. It's not electronic, it's not digital. It has dials that slowly turn. Most of you are familiar with this. Now, the nature of these things is typically, because these meters must be manually read, they only provide the utility with the homeowner's total usage for the month. And many of us feel that should be enough. Why do they need to know more than that? That's what they need to bill us, our total monthly usage for the month. And we'll get into some of the reasons why they want more data. This is what one smart meter model looks like. This is the kind we're seeing over on the east side of the state with Detroit Edison. I didn't get a chance to cut in the photograph of your GE meter, but some of you during intermission want to take a look. It looks as though one of the consumers folks brought an actual model of the meter.
That's a real one. Yep.
Okay.
That's the real deal.
So maybe some of you want to take a look at that. It's a GE meter that's on the table over there on the sidewall. Okay, the thing about the smart meter is you no longer have that big wheel turning, you no longer have the clock dials. What you have is an electronic, you have the electronic display here. That display actually usually cycles through 2 or 3 different numbers. The kinds that we have that are made by Itron over on the east side cycles through 3 different numbers. One of them, I believe, is an identification number for the meter. One of them is your meter reading, and I forget what the third one is, but they cycle through rather rapidly. Some folks have had some difficulty reading their own meter because the numbers flip through rapidly and they're not sure which one is the meter reading. But there is information on, at least on DTE's website, on how to read the meters, and probably consumers have something. Do you have something like that on yours too, Mr. McGee?
I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about.
Okay, is there something on a consumer's website that explains to people how to read their own meter?
No,
No?
we read the meter, the new
Okay.
meters.
Okay.
Unless you're talking about the old analog meters.
Yeah.
No, there's no need with the new
Okay.
meters.
That has been one of the complaints we've had over on the east side, is people are frustrated that they can't read it and they have to take the company's word for the reader because they have no way of cross-checking it. Functions of the meter, of the smart meter. What it can do, it measures, and it can store in its memory a lot of detailed information about your usage, and then it can transmit that information, usually by radio waves, although there are other ways. There's what's called power line carrier, where the signals go right through the power lines. There's the possibility, at least, of doing it through fiber optics, but I don't know of any company that's doing it that way in the United States right now. They do it that way over in Italy. And what this does is it can show the utility how much electricity you're using each and every hour of the day. How much electricity did you use between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning, for instance? that tends to create information about your lifestyle, your habits, your routines, when you get up in the morning, when you make meals, when you leave the house to go to work, when you've left the house for a vacation. All these kind of things can be discerned from the data that comes off that meter. It could also be done with a hardwired internet connection, but I haven't heard of too many utilities doing it that way. Mainly because I guess broadband internet isn't widely enough available, universally enough available to make that practical. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to sit down before
I've just been informed by someone that we are at capacity in this room, so more people show up. Unfortunately, we will have to turn them away. Maybe what we can do is have them sign our, we do have a sign-in thing on a clipboard by the door for mailing. And if we do have to turn people away, if we at least get their name. Somebody just arrived?
No, we're good.
Okay. If we get their email, we can send them, email them information about the program. Okay, the meters use two-way communication, so the utility can send signals to the meter as well as receive signals from the meter. It has often, these smart meters have the ability to turn service on or off remotely when a bill has not been paid or at the time of a move-in or move-out. Saves trouble of sending somebody out to read the meter at move-in time. It can act or will act most likely in the future as a gateway for communication between the electric utility and individual appliances within your home. Now that would happen only after we get the next generation of appliances. They're calling those smart appliances, and they will have chips in them. Whirlpool Corporation announced a year or so back, beginning in 2014, they will make no appliance that is not a smart appliance. So your freedom to choose whether you want a smart appliance or not may be rapidly disappearing. Unless you want to keep on repairing your old appliances or buying used appliances, pretty soon your house is going to be full of smart appliances. These smart appliances will talk to the smart meter. And the utility will then gather still more information, more detailed and specific information about what exact appliances you're using. The question is that I want to focus on is, all this data collection really necessary? And what it reveals information about your lifestyle and heretofore private activities within the home. Let's just take them one by one. Let's look at some of the arguments that the utilities will give us as to why they need to collect all this data. First place, is to encourage customers to conserve energy and to shift some of their energy demand to off-peak times of day. In that regard, I think I should say this. There's been a change in the whole attitude of how we approach electricity generation. It used to be, until fairly recent times, that people were encouraged to use as much electricity as they wanted. The more the merrier as far as the utility was concerned, because they're getting paid by the kilowatt hour. And what they would do is, if the demand outstripped the existing facilities, they would build more power plants. And that seemed to be working okay for a long time. But now we have all this concern with things like global warming and also a desire to become independent of Middle East oil. So we don't have to go fight the wars to preserve our access to oil. For some of these reasons, there's a new way of looking at these things. And the new way of looking at it basically is we're going to work towards the goal of making the consumers, the utility customers, adjust their demand so that it will fit within the available supply, the existing supply. We're not going to build new power plants, at least not as rapidly as we used to. We're running into all sorts of problems with the coal-fired plants, the nuclear plants. There's objections to building most of these things. So we're going to try to damp down the demand to match the available supply. At least that's the thinking. Another word for that is rationing. So the idea of the smart meter is if we can show people in detail what they're using, where they could maybe go online and see their electric consumption broken down hour by hour, day by day. Maybe this will encourage them to see where they could economize, they could use a little less energy. Or if we can get them to shift their demand to off-peak hours of the day. And this is very important, and I can understand why the utilities want to do this, because the biggest problem when it comes to matching demand and supply is during the times of peak load, like in the summertime, during the peak air conditioning hours, from perhaps the middle of the afternoon through 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. A lot of demand for air conditioning, a lot of electric demand at those hours. Much less during the night, less during the morning than there is in the afternoon and early evening. Now, the number of power plants that they have to build to meet all this demand is determined pretty much by the peak load. At other times of the day, they have no problem meeting the demand. In fact, they can run their most efficient generators at other times of the day. They don't, but to meet the peak demand, they may have to fire up plants that are less efficient, that give less kilowatt hours per barrel of oil burned or whatever. And so it's less efficient, it costs the utility more to provide that electricity during peak hours. And there's a danger that it will exceed the available capacity, and they're pretty much blocked from building new plants. So those are some of the goals. Now, the idea is the customer can see his usage by going online through their internet to their account with a password. They can see their usage. Or there may be displays that could be mounted in the home that you could have on your coffee table or mounted on the wall or whatever that would show you that information. Okay, so the question is, do smart meters really conserve energy? And the answer from everything that we're learning is no. Only the customer, the meter doesn't conserve any energy whatsoever. Only the customer can do that, only by changing their lifestyle. No study that we know of to date has shown real evidence that customers change their behavior because a smart meter was installed. Most people are too busy to look at the data or make use of the information. Or they can't change their consumption patterns. You know, if they're on a certain schedule because of their work hours, that's going to determine when they're peaking, when they're going to have to use the most electricity. There was a pilot program done by Detroit Edison and a few years back where they went into a couple areas, Grosse Ile and Harson's Island, to do a small-scale experiment, putting in smart meters to see whether it would change people's behavior. Well, they got the network working okay, but they never proved that it changed behavior, or at least not changed behavior enough to cover the cost of the meters. And then with the Michigan Public Service Commission, they were supposed to see a cost-benefit study done on those pilots. But the pilot cost-benefit studies were never done. Nevertheless, our dear Michigan Public Service Commission authorized mass deployment of smart meters, even though the pilot program did not show an economic benefit for the customers. The result of that, Michigan's Attorney General, Cox at the time, began a lawsuit against the Public Service Commission, arguing that it was inappropriate for them to authorize mass deployment when there had been no cost benefit studies. It's not fair to the utility customers because the cost of loss is going to be passed along to the customer. Not fair to make the customer bear these costs if you can't prove that you're saving energy. That case went to the Michigan Court of Appeals last April, nearly a year ago. The Court of Appeals sided with the Attorney General and said you're right. They did not do the cost-benefit study. They had no justifiable legal basis for authorizing the mass deployments. Now, the Court of Appeals didn't stop the mass deployments, but they kicked it back to the Public Service Commission, and they said, you guys are going to have to take another look at this. You're going to have to redo that whole rate case where you awarded them rate increase for the smart meters. You have to look at that, you're gonna have to prove by proper evidence on the record that these things are cost justified. Now, if they can't successfully complete that, the court will probably step in again and put a stop to the program. But the odds are the Michigan Public Service Commission will find a way to cost justify it. Because it's a pet program that they want to push. Now let's look at some of the other reasons why the utilities say that they need all this detailed data about our household use. One of the reasons is something called time of use pricing. This means that they would be charging their customers more when electricity is used during hours of peak demand. Just to pull some numbers out of the air, maybe they're going to charge you 20 cents or 30 cents a kilowatt hour if you use electricity for your air conditioning during the hottest part of the day. But maybe all during the night, they're only going to charge you 7 or 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So there would be some incentives if you are able to make the shift. If you're willing to do your laundry in the middle of the night, for example, you can save some money. Okay, it's supposed to provide incentive to shift demand. Does it work? No, it does not work, from what we've seen so far in these studies. The pilot study did not show enough change of behavior to cover the cost of the meters. And we're not aware of any study that did show such results. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say maybe there's a way to make those incentives work. Maybe they didn't do it exactly right. Maybe some way can be found to make the incentives work. Does that mean we need smart meters? No, I would say all that would be needed is dual register meters that accumulate peak time usage in one register and off-peak usage in the other. It might look something like this. What we're seeing on the upper one is the peak hours usage. Okay, I think I better get back on the mic. On the upper one, we're seeing the peak hours usage, where it says 029874. That's cumulative year-to-date or since the meter was installed usage. This is electricity that was used during peak hours. The second register down below is the usage in off-peak hours. It could do this with a mechanical meter with 2 separate counters if they wanted to. I'm sure somebody could design such a meter. Or they could do it with an electronic digital meter with 2 separate counters. They don't need to know everything you did at every different hour of the day. All they need to know is your total usage during peak hours and your total usage during off-peak hours for billing purposes. And they charge you the higher rate for the peak hour usage and the lower rate for the other. That could implement time of use billing. But no, they're not going to do it that way. They're going to do it in a way that maximally violates your privacy. Okay, let's look at some other things. Why else do they want the smart meters? Okay, one reason is to eliminate the cost of the meter readers. Now, in the long run, that's probably a good thing. Anytime we can make something less labor intensive and more automated, there are benefits. In theory, it should make it possible for them to give us electricity cheaper than if they had to continue paying the meter readers. But there's a way to do that too, without invading our privacy or exposing us to all the electromagnetic radiation that's now in the offing. And that's the AMR system, which stands for Automated Meter Reading. Systems like that have been around for quite a while. It's where you have a drive-by vehicle. It could be a car, a truck. Goes down a residential street. It sends out a signal, a radio beep signal. It's an interrogation signal. It says, okay, meters, all your meters on the street, give me your readings. And when they hear that interrogation signal, they all answer back and give their readings. And this is an activity that would occur once a month, and they get your monthly readings from everybody on the street. All within a matter of seconds. Move on to the next street. Nobody has to get out of the car, the truck, and get into somebody's backyard and get bitten by the dog or anything, you know. Very automatic. I tend to like this system for that reason. Okay, now there's another argument for the smart meters, and that is that they're needed to promptly report power outages. Utilities want to be alerted to power outages and be able to dispatch service personnel quickly to correct this. Okay, and that is important. Let's say you have a storm big storm blows through, a lot of tree branches and limbs come down, wires are brought down. Or it could be as a result of ice, over wires getting heavily laden with ice. Storm like that, the utility has a real struggle to get everybody's power restored. And what can happen is that the utility linemen, they think they restored power in a neighborhood. You know, they fixed whatever the main problem was in the neighborhood. And they leave, and they go on to the next neighborhood, and then they get a call that so-and-so still doesn't have their power. They get to go back to the neighborhood where they thought they were done, because there was also drop wires from the pole to somebody's house that got brought down. So it would eliminate problems like that. They have instant information about which houses still don't have power. That's a benefit. But that could be done without smart meters. All you need is a little radio transmitter, battery powered, that would only transmit when there's an outage. Okay, who pays? We all do. We're paying partly through federal taxes, and partly the rest of it is passed through on our utility bills. The utility companies are allowed to recoup their capital investments plus a return on their capital investments. So they're not going to eat these costs, they're going to pass them along. Where are these being installed? All over the world. Now this is an interesting point, because if you look at that map and you see all those, everywhere you see one of those little red circles, I don't know if you can see the letters in it, but it says AMI, which is Automated Metering Interface. Every one of those little red circles is where they got smart meters. And you see them all over the United States, all through Europe, parts of the Mideast, South Africa, South America, and China, which doesn't happen to show on this map, China and Japan. So basically all the industrialized areas of the world are heavily populated with these things now. And when did it start? It all started less than 10 years ago. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why, how does it happen that every industrialized country in the world is doing this all at the same time? Does nobody sit back and say, well, Belgium is doing this, or France is doing this, why don't we wait and see how it works out there before we start doing it? No, nobody's waiting to see how it works in another country. They're all doing it simultaneously. So you've got to assume that there's some common factor that's driving all this. And I'll get to that in a minute. So why are these meters controversial? Well, first of all, it is the invasion of privacy. Our Fourth Amendment rights are being violated. I hope you all know what the Fourth Amendment is. It says that we are to be secure in our homes against unreasonable searches and seizures. Police, law enforcement authorities are required to get a warrant before they come into our house, except under very limited special circumstances. And that is the Fourth Amendment, and this would seem to be a clear breach of it, because the utilities, at the instigation of our government,